identity, and then I'm going to show you, how you can up your game in security when it comes to locking the front door and then moving forward. So when we think about it, the reason identity is so critical in 2019 is because the perimeter is disappearing. Even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, not that long ago, we were really hindered by the technologies we had at the time. And a lot of the focus would be on securing software, would be on controlling the perimeter around it. So, back in the day, software would come in a box, you would install it, you'd be in control of that server and that software, be in control of who could connect to it. And many times as well, you would be able to issue the desktop and the laptop and the devices that the user used to access it. And then probably you'd even issue them a badge. There would be some control over the network that they used it on. So that became very convenient in securing access to applications. And when people left the organization, they would not have access to the network, or you would take their device back. There's a lot of convenient checks and balances to controlling who had access to what. But right now, the perimeter is really disappearing. We have the same applications, and we need to make them accessible to more and more people. And we need to develop new applications that connect to our existing intellectual property so that they can get access as partners or contractors, and they can get access immediately. We really have a goal of granting people access right when they start. So 9:01 a.m. of that first day of a new contract, a contractor is going to bill for the hours that they spend on the project. And if they're not connected to the application and they can't get the access they need, they're just wasting time. And then 5:01 p.m., the last day on the project, they may still have access even after they've been terminated, because software does not come in a box anymore. It really is delivered as software as a service, and it comes in different formats. It comes in the form of applications, but also platforms, APIs, and many people are bringing their own devices, or they're really not assigned a device anymore. So when we think about it, the perimeter is really disappearing. We have all of these different roles of people that need access, and we have all these different things that we need to grant them access to. And you can no longer assume trust. And zero trust is a discipline. It's really not solved with technology. It's enabled with technology. But it's a discipline for you to understand your environment and to ensure that you can correctly identify the types of people that are getting access to your network, and to connect all of the things that need access, and to assign and control that access. So we're going to talk about zero trust and what it means for identity. And zero trust for identity consists of these tenets. Number one, we know that the roles are changing and the people who need access. So as they gain access, it is important that we get accurate identification. So not just who the user is or who they say they are by the presentation of their credentials and their second factor, but also what they're doing, what device is being used to access, where they're coming from. Is it deviant behavior from behavior they've done before? Everything that we understand, all the metadata about that user, we are getting more and more information about the user as the technology gets better and better. And so when we say accurate identification, we mean a system of perpetual increase in the ability to accurately identify them. Number two, if you are able to accurately identify them, then you are able to define centrally the roles that they should have access and the access that they should have. So if you know who this person is, then you should be able to create declarative roles and policy and assign those roles to those items. And so when people are coming this way, or when they change roles in the environment, that access will change. And number three, it should give you full policy control. So not just be able to accurately identify the roles, but also full policy control over the entire transaction. So not just authentication, but behavior before authentication, shutting down deviant behavior before those credentials are presented, as well as during authentication, controlling which methods and opening up methods for them to access. So, it's not just usernames and passwords anymore. It's social identity, it's partner federation, it's desktop single sign-on if you have a device under management, it's social authentication for your customer identities. It's passwordless authentication for new web browsers. And really, it's anything that you decide. PIV and CAC and government. It's really things that you must be able to control at a central location. And post authentication. So not just confirmation of the user, but also anything else that you want to happen post authentication. Multi-factor is a great example of one of those things, but as you'll notice, we need to up our game moving forward, and we need a platform that's going to give us full policy control and other options moving forward as attacks change. And finally, once that access is granted, you need to issue ephemeral tokens, tokens that expire and are also revocable. So having an environment where people are not retaining usernames and passwords for privileged accounts, where they're not retaining the keys to the kingdom and SSH keys, these are critical because when people leave the organization, there are a lot of ways that they can try to re-access the software. They could try to go to Salesforce and log in, or go to their HR system that is now in the cloud and try to re-log in and change their information. Right? With an ephemeral token, it's been revoked, 5:01 p.m., and they're completely out of the system. So these are the things that you need to be looking for, and this is the way that you should measure how close you are to zero trust and how you can get there in identity. Now let's talk about Okta, and Okta is the foundation for a zero trust security workforce. We are a platform as a service identity and access manager that contains all of the functionality that you would need to turn on to enable you to express this policy, connect your users, and connect your applications, databases, and operating systems. So if you think about it, you know, we all grew up, every environment grows up differently, but when you look at the things that, the technologies that you invested in and the things that you're doing now with those applications, they're the same actions that you could get by just connecting them to Okta and turning on this functionality. For example, single sign-on is a basic tenet of Okta, and also adaptive multi-factor, not only the ability to provide a second factor, but to control the policy and the behavior before, during, and after authentication. We also have the capabilities to secure APIs that you are newly publishing to your workforce as well as your partners and customers. So the same functionality of providing single sign-on and providing information about your role and access and permissions, and then securing that API is available as well. And then also we have a universal directory, which allows you to lift and shift the users from directory stores that they potentially shouldn't be in. We just stuck them in there to connect them, but also contain them and also translate how they are connected to those applications. So we shouldn't force any of the applications to be changed. We should connect Okta to them, and Universal Directory will provide the translation mapping. And we also have to have a way to get users into the systems via lifecycle management. Most of those systems, when you convert them to modern authentication, or even if you connect them to authentication systems like Okta, the application still expects some metadata to be synchronized to it. For example, like Salesforce expects you to assign a role and a license to it, as well as Office 365 expects a role and a license to be assigned when a user is granted access. We already have this provisioning built in for over 250 applications, and we have open protocols to support any other application that requires it. So if you need to, it's not just authentication and authorization, it's also synchronizing user data from Universal Directory and from anywhere else upstream, like HR systems. These HR systems, they know when people are active in the organization and when they are not supposed to have access. So connecting them is really a no-brainer when it comes to security. And finally, advanced server access. So we're going to extend the Okta plumbing beyond applications, and we're going to extend it down to operating systems as well as databases for ephemeral token connection. Now, why is this important? Well, we built this platform as a service over time, and we are the leader in identity and security, not just in all of the Magic Quadrants, but also any way you would choose or select an identity provider, Okta is going to come out on top. We are now, at this time, one of the longest lived identity as a service platforms, and customer success is our #1 differentiator. We have over hundreds of different customer success stories on Okta.com, and we have the broadest and deepest catalog of pre-built integrations, over 6,500 to date. So any application that you have is going to be able to connect to Okta, fulfilling the zero trust requirements. And also, we have achieved some of the highest levels of security. We have been FedRAMP authorized since 2017, and we are the only identity and access management cloud on the market to achieve this certification, as well as any number of certifications that ensure that Okta is secure. And we are highly scalable. Okta at this time authenticates 68 million users, 6 million unique daily users a day. We process 650 million API calls, and we have over 200 million activated users on the platform. What that means is that you may have 50 users in your organization, or you may start small or feel like you're starting small when you start a project with Okta, but in reality, you are not just 50 users. You are the 650 millionth and 50th API call of that day. You are the 68 millionth and 50th API authentication of that day. And each and every one of those authentications and API calls happens at near real time and at speed. And every day, new companies sign up with Okta and they add their user bases to Okta, and we just expand, and each and every one of those calls moves forward. And so this is really the key for Okta, is that we've really proven that we have a technology that is always on, and that is highly scalable, and that is really going to work for your users and your applications. Now, these are just a couple of the customers that trust Okta to run workforce identity. And in each of these cases, most of these companies, they didn't have nothing when we came to them, right? All of these companies, none of these companies have grown up, in the past 2 years. They're all very long-lived companies. And they were all trying to do security and identity with different products or different solutions that they were stitching together. But in the end, they were able to consolidate all those out for Okta. And all of their users now will be able to log in first thing and get a pleasant experience on any device that they choose. 9:01 a.m. rolls around, and those new employees or those new contractors, they can see immediately what kind of applications they have access to, and they can access it on their laptop or their mobile device. It doesn't matter. And the level of access they get will vary depending on if this is a managed device or not. Now, on the customer side, we have this platform that we then expose for customer identity. The use cases in customer identity are vastly different from workforce, but Okta has all of these capabilities built in to its platform. We simply license customer identity users just a little differently to make it cost effective. Because lots of these users, like Experian, you're only logging in once a year to check your credit. JetBlue, you're only logging in a couple times to check into your flight. MLB, game day, or hopefully after game day, but you're really only logging in to check scores. So we want to make it cost effective for them, and they can store millions of users in the Okta cloud and make it very cost effective and secure it at scale. And each and every one of these, when you log in, you have no idea that you are an Okta customer. You're still visiting their sites in Albertsons. You're visiting one of the 22 brands, whether it be Safeway or Wegmans. You're still visiting that brand. You're downloading that particular application. But each and every one of these will authenticate to Okta behind the scenes. And if you've ever logged in on any of these sports events as well, you are an Okta customer and you potentially had no idea that you were using it. And for workforce identity, it's really critical that we understand where we need to go in the next 10 years. So, the way that we treated identity was not really calling out the security and the health of that architecture. What we were doing was really just thinking of it like an afterthought. Okay, if I need to deploy this software and install it on the server, then I need to install Active Directory or LDAP or the thing that it authenticates against. Or maybe I need to manage those users internally. But today, we need an independent and neutral platform that connects to all these things and allows us to dynamically assign roles so that we can lift and shift people out of weird constructs that don't make sense, like domains or OUs or things that just don't make sense anymore, and just really flatten out the roles and make them more dynamic so that we can give them access to the appropriate applications. And not just access, but also we can license them, we can provision their user data, we can synchronize user groups, we can really make it possible for them to get access on day one. And then tomorrow we need to think about having a universal platform for all of these devices. As identity is going to unifying now in the space, we need to think about how we're going to manage that scale. So organization after organization after organization, when you acquire a company, when you divest from a company, when you create a new application that is for a particular business unit, should it share a session with other applications? Could it gain information, from other applications that the customer uses today? It shouldn't really start from scratch. It should be using identity like DNS. And that's really how we want to think about customer identity. We don't want to leave it to the development team to build it themselves. What we need is we need to think about identity like a microservice. You wouldn't rewrite the DNS, or you wouldn't rewrite the payment application. So you wouldn't rewrite the texting application, or the notification application. So you should probably not rewrite identity. And through the magic of single sign-on, you can stitch together any number of digital assets and the retail storefront or in the mobile world so that you can reuse what you've already written to provide a better customer experience. And tomorrow, that's just the standard, right? Like no one rewrites DNS, no one rewrites these services. So it's going to be expected that everything just plugs in and is plug and play to these layers. And we have just to give you an idea of how many applications your application is probably on here. And if you go to okta.com/apps, you can actually Google for all of your applications and see if they're supported. And if you look at this map, this is going to tell you which ones are most critical. So of all of the applications on that list, the ones that are most impacted by identity and security are going to be the ones in these pillars. These usually impact a significant number of users, either everyone in the organization, or they are related to security initiatives. So these are the applications, if you have them and you are not, and you go back to those basic zero trust tenets, you really want to go back and look at these and ask, am I granting access via an ephemeral token? Can I revoke them? 9:01 a.m., can people get access? 5:01 p.m., am I guaranteed that they don't? If you go back and just apply those basic tenets, it's going to really tell you how fragile your existing strategy is and how we can improve it. So if we look at the zero trust maturity curve, we've developed this. You can really understand where you fit. You take that list of applications and you look at what you're doing today and where it fits. And if you have more than one directory, multiple single sign-on, no cloud integration, the need to poke holes in the firewall to get at those user directories that you've stood up for cloud initiatives or for digital transformation. If you have more than one identity cloned in different domains that service different functions, that's going to be a sign that you are here. And where we need to go is we need to go to unified identity and access management. It's okay to have multiple domains. It's okay to have multiple types of identities because you can't change, the way these applications were written. They're older applications. But what we can do is we can put them together under unified identity and access management that is essentially turning all those active directories into dumb terminals, right? If you need to provision a specific username, a specific way for this application, that's fine, do it, right? But at the end of the day, do we have a unified identity and access management layer that secures access, revokes it immediately, is capable of understanding all the relationships and control, and is someplace for you to create a new front door for security. And that's really where you need to go, is to create a new front door that has the capability for you to turn on all of these policies so that you can shut the front door. And you want a front door that gets better and better over time because attacks change. So you don't want to spend time upgrading software, changing software. You just want that functionality to appear, and you want to decide whether or not you're able to do it at that time, you know, and express it in a policy. And that will unify your policies, connecting your apps at servers and databases. And then finally, you know, once that plumbing is really in place, then it's really up to you how you express that policy. So let's make sure that all the things that we said are true, right? I mean, are we eliminating lead time for access? Are we getting the right access? Did we understand the roles, or do we need to re-clarify those roles? Did we create automation for levers to reduce our attack surface? And did we actually secure the things that were not connected, that were left open, like APIs? Let's go after and go get them. And finally, we want to move to an adaptive workforce. So once you have made those connections and once your policies are rich, that's where you want to really turn on things that can help you, like AI or machine learning, to help understand the risk based on behavior, and also continue to use things that are a little more fine-grained and a little bit more advanced. So continuous and adaptive authentication, richer policies that are more applicable on different devices, and maybe adapting some other things that will give you less friction, right? So like think of your policy like a building block, right? Like a bunch of Legos, right? If you have a bunch of Legos, what are you going to build? And for who, right? That's really what you're going to ask, and that's what we'll talk about that today. So how do you find the opportunity? Well, it's actually really easy. If you just go ahead and think about those zero trust security tenants, and you look at your existing infrastructure, it's really easy once you know how to see where you can improve it. I'm going to use this example from BigCorp. BigCorp is a reference for Okta. It's not a public reference, so we changed the name, but BigCorp is a digital radio station. It has employees, and it also has a significant number of franchisee users. And BigCorp's responsibility is to provide all the functionality for their franchisees. So give them a system, like an MSP, for them to do HR functions and payroll functions, to do email and productivity functions. Everyone gets a BigCorp, email, and then also they have administrators who connect to a VPN to maintain infrastructure that supports these use cases. And they also have a help desk because if the franchisees can't get access to these things, they have to file a ticket. So they drew this on the board. This is actually quite close to what they drew. They drew this on the board. They're like, we have Workday. People are contained separately in Workday, so that's why they're a different color. And we support these applications, and they authenticate with our AD. And in this case, Workday was completely separate, from AD, but we would use these supporting technologies to synchronize the users over here. And then also we were using AD to, and then the ServiceNow's proprietary connector, the mid server, to connect it. So that's why they're here. And then also what was very interesting is BigCorp has a lot of franchisees. If you think about a franchisee, they're like WKPMG in Cincinnati. They have like 14 users. They do digital content, so they tweet, they record podcasts and shows. And when they do that, they are on the hook for reading out certain things. If it's a live stream, they'll read out like the weather. And if they're doing a podcast or everything, they'll talk about like, Dollar Shave Club and other ads that are purchased and served out depending on the region and the call code of the franchisee. So right now they had these proprietary applications, and they would give access to the franchisees. So a DJ at WKPMG would have to log in again to read their content for the weather. And they'd have to log in again to targeted ads to read what ads were purchased and what they should read on their podcast. And every time they did this, they had to feed the system, or the DJ would have to inform the system what their region was and their call code in order to get the right ad. So these are just some of the challenges that they listed. Duplication of users, you can see 80 creation was a long time, from creation in Workday of a DJ to 80, long time to do it. No deactivation process for DJs, poor experience for DJs. DJs are not the most technical savvy people. Three or four passwords to do their payroll, as well as their email, as well as these applications. The internal admins have some different factors, and also this outgrowth of these applications had prompted them to look at a new identity system. So this is really the thing that focused on this call, right? So how do we improve something like this? I mean, this looks pretty typical to what everyone's doing, right? Everyone's got an AD, a couple domains probably, depending on if they've acquired companies. They've all got HR. You know, what are we going to do here? How are we going to improve this? Well, we're going to give you an easy way to figure that out. We're going to give you a way to understand identity, and we're going to draw it out very simply. All the user stores are going to go on the left-hand side. Everything for identity and how we secure that identity will go right here. And we will then write down all the groups and roles that will become the targets of policy and application assignment. And for applications, we need to care about three things. We need to care about authentication. We need to care about authorization. So not just authentication, like who you are, but authorization. You know, do you have a license? Are you an admin? And then finally, provisioning. Do you need metadata synchronized from the directory to you, right? So every application, we're going to make this consideration. We're going to reorganize the board. All right. So Big Corp talked about their HR managed service that they provide for franchisees and themselves. This has a lot of information in it. Also guarantees 9:01 a.m. a new DJ at WKPMG at Cincinnati is going to get access. Very critical that we put that on the right-hand side. We're going to make that connection to Okta. And then we're going to draw out these two domains. Two domains serve two different functions. So it really remains to be seen if we might keep all two domains because only one services internal employees. We'll see about that. And we'll redraw that particular infrastructure here in line with Okta. This infrastructure is duplicative of capability in Okta. So we're going to go ahead and draw it here. And then also in our conversation, we did find out that they also were using another on-prem factor, so that got added. And then we're going to show you what we're looking for. So if you remember those silos that I brought up earlier about the integrations, a lot of them really focused on applications of a specific type. And they're really here, right? These applications affect every single person in the organization. So we're going to ask what they are. In this case, they told us that Workday and payroll were for HR, email collaboration and unified communications with Office 365, IT service management with ServiceNow. And we asked about security, specifically things that had to do with identity. So VPNs, proxies, mobile device management, or enterprise mobility solutions, privileged access management, and cloud access security brokers. We asked about all of this. In the end, they don't do that much, so we just were left with the VPN. And then we asked them what kept them up at night, and these were those applications. So now we're ready to go to make that connection. The first connection we're going to make is from Workday. All of the user's information is here, and this is an out-of-the-box connection. So 9:01 a.m. new franchisees, as they add a new DJ, they're going to get access to the HR system itself, as well as email, as well as anything else they need access to right away. And that's going to populate Okta's universal directory. The next thing we're going to do is make that connection to the domain users here. All the users that they already had still had a username and password. They have to log in with something that they know. So we're going to make this connection. It's going to allow us to take all those users and allow them to log in to anything behind Okta using the same credentials that they already had. And what we also did is it gave us the opportunity to synchronize groups and roles, not just what they had defined, because it already defined 80 security groups, but also to make new policy because we needed to express new policies. We needed to lock down the front door for things like geolocation behavioral. We knew we could stop this bad behavior, and we could synchronize and unify the factors that they use. So we were able to consolidate these two factors into a single front door policy that now is controlled in one location. And that's our first tenet for zero trust. Now we're going to go ahead and make the connections via policy to all the downstream applications. We know what we should do, we know how to secure it, and we know who should get access. So let's just go make that connection. We are going and connecting all these applications, and we are even able to connect these particular new applications with modern authentication, and we're able to send information that came upstream all the way down. Now when they authenticate, they just go ahead and click on the application, it loads, and the application gets information about their call code and region directly from Okta each and every time. And once we do that, we can phase out all the redundant infrastructure. Everything is being done via identity as a service, and we're passing it all the way through via an ephemeral token that is easily revocable. So now DJs have a deactivation process. It flows all the way through. Franchisees have an onboarding process. It flows all the way through. When people change roles, it flows all the way through. And this is a unified zero trust architecture. So now I'm going to show you a demo of what that might look like. Okay. So I've already logged into my Okta tenant here as this user, but I just want to show you the policy. I want to alter the policy before I actually show you how it logs in. Okay, one moment. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the admin side. When I'm a user, this is all very simple. I can see all the applications I have access to here. But you'll notice here, I'm going to go to the admin side, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to log in and up your game when it comes to policies. We talk a lot about getting rid of passwords and getting rid of passwords in a meaningful way. You know, Okta is allowing you to have as many choices as you need to authenticate in ways that make sense. So if you look at what users are doing, I don't know if every user has to present a password in every condition. If they're logging in from the correct country that is allowed, if they're not doing anything different than they've done before, if they are assigned to a specific group, we are going to be able to allow them to authenticate in any way we choose. So every policy in Okta is targeted to all of these soft policies. So you'll notice in the Big Corp example that I gave, we took policy from existing security groups and new groups that we were able to create policy on. Every single Active Directory security group and user is available to me here. So I can create a policy that encompasses all of the domains that I have and anyone else that is connected to Okta very simply. I just go ahead and search for them and add them to the policy. Also, I can go ahead and create new groups dynamically based on any kind of expression, and they become the target of policy. And all policies work this way in Okta. So I can very easily create a domain-wide policy. If I have 6 domains, 20 domains, if they're trusted, untrusted, I don't care. I can say I need everyone to authenticate this way, and whoever's in this group will work. The next thing I will do is specify how they are going to authenticate. So I have lots of choices here. Like if they're anywhere, actually save countries would be good. Let's see. Yep, save countries. That would be good. And then authenticate with anything. And if their behavior has changed or if it stays the same. In this case, I probably can't predict what it did before, so I'll leave that off. Then access is allowed. And then we're going to go ahead and allow what's called an authentication method of factor sequence. And what that means is that we're essentially taking your policy as a building block. We're deciding what will satisfy this policy. And I have many choices. I can say that it must be username and password. But I could also say it could be anything else. I could say it could be verify push. I could continue to stack other factors on the list. I could continue to put any number of these factors on here. And then finally, I could say that's the password. I mean, these are all options for me. I decide now what the policy is, and I'm free to change it at any time. So in this case, I'm not going to modify it. I'm just showing you the examples. But in this case, it was already set for Okta verify push. That's it. Which means that this is the first example where I'm going to show you where I've eliminated the password. Per critical design, I'm taking out passwords because they're not great, right? We're going to log in a safe manner without a password. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and open our incognito window. And we're going to log into this exact same tenant. So it asks me for my username. I'm coming from the US, which is a safe country, so there's a lot of policy going on that even allows me to do this, but it's available. And when I hit next, it's asking me to send a new factor. And what it's doing is it's sending an Okta verify factor. This is a factor that is coming up on my phone that it's showing me what it is, and it's allowing me to click on it and approve it. And you'll notice that at no time did I use a password, because how my users log in is up to me at any time, and I'm free now to up my game and change that policy at any point. And I think at this point, I think we're ready for questions and comments from anyone on the webinar.
Okay, Jennifer, one of the first questions we have, will Okta Analytics support those of us that need to prove compliance?
Yes, so I believe so. So all of the actions and the log entries of Okta are generated and pumped out in near real time and in SIEM format. So you will be able to not only access them to determine who has done anything in Okta at all, but also to connect them to any system that you have that verifies compliance.
Okay, great. Another question we have, what if an application is not listed in the Okta catalog?
Oh, good question. We actually have 4 application wizards to handle that in a very simple manner. So we have wizards that allow you to connect applications that do not support any modern authentication, such as username and password replay, as well as we have wizards for SAML, WS Federation, OAuth, and OpenID Connect. And we also have a number of other interfaces that you could tap into if you need to. So Okta supports LDAP. It has an LDAP S:// interface. And it also supports Radius as well. And if none of those are acceptable, we also have the Okta Access Gateway that you might be able to put in front of your application and connect it to Okta that way. So we have quite a number of options.
Okay, great, thank you. Another one we have here, can Okta SSO and MFA be automated?
I think yes. I'm not sure I understand that question, Brian. What do you think the user means by that?
Can Okta single sign-on and can single sign-on and multi-factor both be automated? I guess that'd be the question.
I'm going to let the user clarify that question. Maybe if you're listening, go ahead and clarify. What I think you asked maybe is that 9:01 a.m. example where you have a new hire. If they are ready to go and they're hired in the HR system based on their user metadata and their role, which is already known, they can be provisioned and activated in the system. And they can self-enroll in any of the MFA, or you can pre-provision their token.
Yeah, I think they're talking in regard for onboarding, so thank you.
Oh, onboarding, yeah. So that would, but if you want to clarify, go ahead.
Next question, how granular can contextual access be managed? Can it be by location, by device, by network?
Yes, all of those are valid. Behavior, and the behavior is actually customizable, but we include a number of policies for you. So like behavior, device, what was the third one?
Network.
Network, absolutely. We do support both dynamic and hard network definitions like black and white. So a dynamic network would be things like you want to say you want to exclude all of Dubai. We actually maintain lists of ICANN registered IPs and Tor exit points and things like that. So you can say in natural language, I wish to exclude Dubai. I wish to exclude every Tor exit point. You could do that. Also, you could do a very black and white policy. If you know your corporate zones, you can do that. And then behavior is customizable, but we do include a number of examples of this, like what it means to traverse to a new city or a new state based on distance and based on different radiuses. It's generated for you, but you can change it.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we have at the current time. Jennifer, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this today. And, if anybody out there has any questions or concerns, definitely feel free to reach out to myself or Jennifer. And, any closing thoughts or comments before we wrap this up, Jennifer?
No, I look forward to speaking to all of you about Zero Trust and looking at your own analyses after this webinar.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.